Hello everyone, Magdalena here, Wolf of Coins. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I wanted to do something actually kind of crazy because I'm going to analyze fairy tales. And of course it's a huge topic and I could make like 100 videos, but today I wanted to focus on like a narrow area here, namely some of the images we see of female deities in Slavic myths. So I will be talking mostly about two fairy tales that I read, well, two or three. Most of them I read in collection from 19th century by Antoni Józef Gliński. He was a person who collected stories. He then combined them, like made I think 4 volumes of folk tales and others. So yeah, there are really interesting things there. And also, thanks to this book and its amazing author, Marija Gimbutas, I got inspiration to do it because she analyzed Neolithic figurines, and based on that, she formed like a toolkit for interpretation. So I will be drawing from her ideas. I also just got another book by her, and it's too big. It's The Language of the Goddess, foreword by Joseph Campbell. I got it secondhand, but yeah, it's full of pictures, and I think it will give me even more ideas in the future. But without further ado, I would like to tell you about a story. The title is about the prince with a moon on his forehead and stars on his head. So it's a story about there's a king. He meets 3 sisters and he marries one of them. Then she gives birth to the main character of the story, the prince, and we like follow with his adventures. But I won't be focusing on him today. I will be focusing on the ladies. So we see 3 sisters who are crying, and their tears are creating 3 little rivers that then combine into one huge river, and that's how the king finds them, following that river. The reason for them crying is that their father climbed the tree, so they are sitting next to a tree, and he fell down and killed himself. So they are mourning, and yeah, and from their tears, this river was made. And then the king finds them and wants to marry one of them, of course. And then they say what they can do. And first of them says that I can feed the whole army by only 1 spike of grain, 1 straw. The other says I can dress the whole army with 1 thread. And the third one says I can give birth to 12 princes with moons on their foreheads and stars on their heads. So here we see the fertility, wealth goddess in triple form, which is really not uncommon. And one of them gives food, the other clothing, and the third babies. So like 3 basic most important things. They are sitting by a tree, so it's the world tree. And what else? Later we learn that they have control over weather. One of them can bring thunderstorms, the other like really hot weather. And the third one had those 12 princes. So the king chose the one who promised him babies. So it's 12 princes, and we see it's number 12 can be connected to the 12 months of the year. So maybe the goddess here is connected to time, to the turning of the wheel of the year. And what Marija Gimbutas says is that that eyes are the source of blessed moisture. I watched one of her lectures on YouTube, and she shows a slide of a figurine, where like Neolithic figurine, where you can see female deity with those tears flooding from her eyes, and eyes were a motif for many ritual objects. And when we read fairy tales, we can see that tears play a great role, really. So then of course, when the one lady is picked, the other 2 sisters get jealous and they turn into villains in the story. And the queen is accused of giving birth to a monster, and in the end she gets put together with the baby in a barrel and put like onto the sea, exactly like Danae with Perseus, if you know them from Greek mythology. What is interesting, Danae conceived Perseus through like in the Greek myth, Zeus turned into golden rain. So you can see a lot of those images of her and gold coins falling down on her. So it's again, it's the wealth. I have this suspicion that maybe at first the gold belonged to her. So what we have, I checked also at Robert Graves's Greek myths, and he talks about the 3 Danaids by the names of Linda, Chimera, and Yalissa, seem to be worn down forms of Lino Deusa, the binder with linen thread, Katamerizusa, sharer out, and Yalemistria, wailing woman. They are in fact the familiar 3 fates of Moira, because they exercised these very functions. So we actually see 3 ladies who are very similar to this description, because one of them is using thread, so binder with linen thread. The other, there's sharer out, so you can share the grain and give it to people. And lastly, there's the wailing woman, so a crying woman, and they are all crying women. So I find it interesting. Also, we have in Slavic belief, we have three Zorias or Rożanice or Sudički, well, many others, but the triple goddess that is connected to babies and their fates. And just a reminder, all goddesses connected to spinning and weaving are somehow connected to fate. So Robert Graves suggests also that the arc in which the goddess travels, and I mean Danae with Perseus, that this is the new moon arc, and he suggests that it's similar to the story with Semele and Dionysus. He also mentions that Isis searched for Osiris together with her son Horus, but I'm not too sure about that. Anyway, we might see the goddess with her son in the ark. And yeah, it might, like, if the goddess is connected to the turning of the wheel of the year, she might be bringing the divine child that is famous from various cultures. And there are those 12 months or moons. All those little babies have moons on their foreheads. Who knows, maybe there were 13 before in the older version where people counted by the lunar cycles. Anyway, I would connect this image with the winter solstice rites and the arrival of the goddess with the divine child, what we still have in Christianity. Then what else we have here? So the mother says like magical words, and all of a sudden an island appears on the sea where they were drifting, and then they stay and they magically get a great prosperous city and they rule there. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, the other babies got stolen by one of the evil sisters. So we have one prince there who grows, like in a few days he becomes a grown man. And then we hear about those 11 others that are being hidden in the sea. But sometimes they climb onto an island. In this story, we also get a swan associated lady. She's she's a swan maiden. She was turned into a swan, which is like a really popular motif. And she's a powerful sorceress or enchantress. So about the tears, we can also be reminded of, for example, goddess Freya, who was the crying goddess. Officially she was crying because she was mourning her absent husband. Other than that, we have also Demeter. Don't I have her picture here? Oh, you know Demeter. She was mourning her daughter's disappearance, and I would argue that all those tears have something to do with wealth. And now I wanted to talk about the legend that we have. It's one of Warsaw legends, so from my home city. There is the story of a duck wearing a crown, and she is gold. She's a golden duck, and she lives in a cave with on a cave lake, and she can give you great wealth. However, I think in this version she is already she's portrayed as a villain, and it is very weird because she's also described as the most beautiful bird. In some other versions, she's also turning into a beautiful princess. And it's just weird. She's there, like, she's portrayed as a creature who like feeds on human tears of, you know, sadness and stuff like that. She has two helpers, two devils, who are like half human, half animal, with horns and tails and hooves. So I've known this story for a long time, and it always was so like weird to me somehow. Why is she portrayed as evil when she has all this beauty, all this glamour, all this wealth with her? And so when I read this book, I read a lot about goddesses with some features of a water bird. Where is that? For example, we have this lady here. So she has a duck face. And what's interesting about those, there are like a lot of them. I won't be able to show everything to you, but there are a lot of those bird goddesses, and they very often have a necklace. And may I remind you who also had a necklace? Like, seriously. And we have also Ariadne from Crete, who had the famous necklace. Anyway, so she is a beautiful maiden who has great riches. There are also golden ducks or ducks with golden noses in other stories I read, and they lay golden eggs. And so she would be the giver, in my opinion, okay, the giver of wealth in the shape of a water bird. She is gold like the sun, but she's hiding underground near some kind of water source, and she owns this lake that is made of human tears. So it is in the story. But if we think about the first story I mentioned, there are those 3 rivers created from tears of ladies who can perform magic. They can give you wealth in shape of food, clothing, and babies. So what's very curious in this story, the hero puts her because she put a spell on his brother, and he drains the lake, and he puts her into a barrel. So this was so curious for me that again this kind of vessel appears and she's hidden there. So for me in this story, maybe the customs changed, or maybe it was Christianity changing the look on the story. But for me, this is a female deity, giver of wealth, who got shown into bad light. And then about three rivers from the first story. In another story that I read from this collection from 19th century, and in other stories as well, we get 3 springs on the mountain of eternal life. And there are described 3 types of water, and you need them all to resurrect a hero. So it's an unkilling water, healing water, and resurrecting water. And you need to first use the unkill the person, unmurder them, then heal them, and lastly resurrect them. And what's fascinating, it's the same, like we have 3 springs and 3 rivers, just the same like in the first story, from those tears. And very often a tree can be replaced by a sacred mountain. It's always the axis mundi, so the center of the world. What's worth mentioning, in many other tales we get only 2 types of water. So we're skipping the healing one. but yeah, it's a very, very popular motif in Slavic stories. Then we get to the Frog Princess. If you're from an English-speaking country, you probably know the Frog Prince. But in Slavic stories, we get this one. It's a wonderful story, and I will put a link to an English translation of the Frog Princess story from this collection of Polish tales I found. It's available for free online, but it's a story about 3 princes searching for a wife, and they were supposed to follow, like each of them shot an arrow somewhere, and they were supposed to find a wife where the arrow went. So the fate was supposed to decide for them. And the king, their father, said, where is it? The one who brings the best wife will be my successor. So it seems that you needed to find like a proper wife blessed by a goddess, or you needed to marry a representative of a goddess to become the ruler, which is in many fairy tales, the hero, the prince, he comes from afar and he inherits the kingdom of the king who has a daughter. So scholars believe that it is like one of the remnants of the matrilinear marriages, that it was not the son who would inherit the kingdom. It would be either a nephew, so a son of king's sister, or some prince from foreign lands. Anyway, just that. So the youngest, as it's usually about the youngest of brothers or sisters, he finds an arrow next to a frog, and she talks and she says, "Yeah, you need to marry me." And he's like, "What?" But about frogs, this is fascinating. We find frog, like fusion between frog and human, really early in our history. So this is from a Neolithic temple. This is a terracotta figurine, mid-6th millennium BC. So it's a woman with frog back. Marija Gimbutas also sees Shilanagig as a form, like later form of the frog goddess, because she's the frog is a symbol of regeneration. When you die, you need to get regenerated before you are reborn. So this is her, like, guiding you through her womb. And yeah, this is very interesting. So Portrayals of the frog or toad goddess with human face, breasts, and vulva continued through the Bronze and Iron Ages and into the 20th century. So the first one is Bronze Age cemetery, 11th century BC. And here, this one is a votive painting next to Virgin Mary, dated AD 1811 in Bavaria. I find it fascinating. So I wanted to share it. Anyway, so a frog, this symbol is very old for us, and no wonder it appears in stories. So in this story about the frog princess, we get 3 tasks for the brides, because the brides were to compete for which one is the best, and they had tasks for weaving, baking, and then appearing at the ball and showing off like their beauty and dancing and everything. So first of all, in many fairy tales, and I won't go into it because it's a material for a separate video, but there are many descriptions of kind of rites of passage, both for men and women, and they usually are trials for the hero or heroine to pass and get a husband or wife. It's very, very often, and here we actually get both, because first she has to compete, and then her husband has to compete. Anyway, that's a separate story. But yeah, we get those like 3 competitions, and we can see that they closely resemble those first 3 sisters from the first story, because we have weaving, so the linen thread. We have baking, so it's food, grain, and we have beauty, love, making babies in general. So the frog loses her skin because the prince wants her to be always human lady, because once he sees her at the ball in the human form, he burns her skin, and then she turns into a duck and flees. So a water bird. And then he has to go through trials. By the way, it happens in Baba Yaga's hut. And the princess, she is shape-shifting, just like Thetis from Greek mythology, mother of Achilles. So Peleus, in order to marry her, he has to hold her no matter what she turns into, and this is the same task here. We get this also in the story of Protheus. Protheus is changing the sea god, and Thetis is also connected to water. She's the goddess of waters. We also have this in the, I believe, Scottish. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but it's somewhere from the British Isles of Tamlin. I love this story, by the way. There, the heroine has to hold Tamlin, no matter what he turns into, to get him back as her husband. So it's again those trials to get the husband or wife. So anyway, I find this very, very interesting. And so this frog princess has like many powers. She can not only shapeshift, she can also do magic and perform, like create most beautiful things. And yeah, she can make the best carpet and like weave it and bake the best bread, and she's the most beautiful. So what else you can ask for? Then there is one story again from that collection, where we again get number 12, but here it's 12 plus 1, so in fact it's 13, and the 13th person is the leader, the queen. So we have 12 ladies in waiting, and the 13th is the queen, and they all get pregnant in a weird situation, kind of, and then there are 13 children, and they are growing up on an island again. And on this island there is a powerful and wealthy city, so we can imagine that this goddess of wealth is somehow connected to like a mythical island of with a wealthy, probably peaceful city. And this princess, the daughter of the queen, so the children again were to be killed or sent. Then the sentence got they decided to spare them, so they were sent to an island and they lived there. And the princess was called the Wonder Maiden, and she was a gorgeous beauty, but she could also freeze you with her look. And she was associated with swans, so again, water birds. Some other nice pictures for you to look at. We have a triple goddess, Bridget. We have beautiful Isis with birds and on the waters. And yeah, oh, I have Thetis for you too. Look here. And also Valkyries, who were connected to birds, some of them to swans, some of them to crows. And according to Marija Gimbutas, it all depended on the function of the goddess. So the bird of prey, such as an owl or vulture, or also crows or ravens, they were connected to the death goddess of regeneration. And then we would get this other goddess connected to water birds, who was more of a protectress. And the frog was also this regeneration symbol, according to the author, because the frog resembles human fetus, like it's this new life that is not born yet, but there's this power to bring the life back. So I think there is last story I wanted to talk about, and it's, again, I mentioned Witcher games and novels pretty often, but yeah, what can you do? I love them. So there's, if you know the story, there is this Princess Cyrilla, and she is the so-called what's in English, like surprise, a child of surprise, or anyway, it's this story that you will give me what you have, but you don't know about, and it's a baby. But yeah, that's on the side. Let's put that on the side. I don't want to focus on that. there is a princess there who is related to a white goose. She and her sisters bathe as geese, leaving their like human skins on the shore. I'm sure you've heard about many stories about maidens who turn from human to bird and the other way around. There is also a story about seals, but again, digression. So yeah, they're bathing, and a hero finds this cloth of hers and returns it, and they fall in love, of course. and then he has to go through trials to win her as his wife, but she's also connected to a bee and to a ladybug. And then during the story, she's constantly shape-shifting. She turns into a river. She changes into a church, which is, Christian. But if we think about the church as a temple, and we look at this, this is a temple model of clay with wide inverted T-shaped entrances on all sides and bird goddess mask on a cylinder on the roof. So this is a model of a temple, and with a goddess head on top. This is her body, and man, this is her necklace. So yeah, I loved it. And then she changes also into a dark forest, into a white stone, and lastly into a cornflower. And then the story goes on. It's fascinating, actually, because she lives as a cornflower for some time. It's awesome. So to sum this up, I think in all those fairy tales, we can glimpse very, very old plots, like stories and images that were not lost, even though thousands of years passed. And as I said, how to put it right? Well, I glimpsed this image of the goddess in her sometimes triple, sometimes singular form. She is forever changing. She's turning into a water bird. She's turning into a frog or into some other animal. But she is this form is the wealth-giving goddess. And I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions or like your own ideas you would like to share with me, I would be delighted to hear them. Please let me know if you've enjoyed it. And oh my God, I talked so long, I cannot believe it. Okay, I'm finishing now. Have a lovely day. Bye.